A little after 8 o'clock on the night of November 24th, 1971, a man carrying $200,000 disappeared from the rear of a passenger jet. There was no confirmed landing site, no verified identity, and no explanation for what happened after he stepped into the darkness. The aircraft continued south. The man did not. More than half a century later, the case remains the only unsolved act of air piracy in American history. The world remembers him as D.B. Cooper, but that was never the name he gave. The day before Thanksgiving, 1971, a man approached the Northwest Orient Airlines counter at Portland International Airport. He paid cash for a one-way ticket to Seattle on Flight 305. The journey was short, normally less than an hour. The name written on the ticket was Dan Cooper. Witnesses would later describe him as calm and unremarkable, a man in his mid-40s dressed in a dark business suit, a white shirt, and a black tie. He carried a briefcase and took a seat near the rear of the Boeing 727. He ordered a bourbon and soda. Nothing about him appeared designed to attract attention. That may have been the point. Shortly after 3 o'clock, Cooper handed a note to a flight attendant. At first, she assumed it was a phone number from a passenger trying to flirt with her. Then Cooper told her to read it. The note said that he had a bomb. When the flight attendant sat beside him, Cooper opened his case just far enough for her to see wires and a collection of red-colored sticks. Whether the device was real has never been established. It did not need to be. Cooper delivered his demands: 4 parachutes and $200,000 in $20 bills. He wanted the items waiting when the aircraft landed in Seattle. The crew informed the authorities. The passengers were told that a mechanical problem would delay their arrival. For the people in the cabin, Flight 305 was simply circling. For everyone in the cockpit, it had become a negotiation. On the ground, law enforcement officers began assembling the ransom. The serial number of every bill was recorded. 4 parachutes were obtained. Flight 305 remained in the air for roughly 2 hours while the preparations were made. When it finally landed in Seattle, Cooper received the money and parachutes. In return, he released all 36 passengers and 2 members of the crew. He could have ended the hijacking there. Instead, he ordered the aircraft back into the sky. His destination was Mexico City, but the plane would need to refuel before it could get there. Only a small flight crew remained aboard with him. Cooper gave instructions intended to keep the aircraft low and slow. The Boeing 727 had one feature that made it unusually suited to what he appeared to be planning: a staircase beneath its tail that could be lowered in flight. As the aircraft moved south from Seattle, Cooper stayed in the rear cabin. The crew stayed behind the closed cockpit door. At some point, he tied the ransom bag together using cord cut from one of the remaining parachutes. Then he selected a parachute for himself. The exact moment of his departure was not witnessed. But a little after 8 o'clock, somewhere between Seattle and Reno, the man known as Dan Cooper lowered the rear staircase and jumped. He wore a suit, dress shoes, and no equipment capable of telling him precisely where he was. Below him was darkness and a vast, uncertain landscape. No one aboard ever saw him again. When the aircraft landed safely in Reno, federal agents searched it from end to end. Cooper was gone. What remained was fragmentary: a black clip-on tie, 2 of the parachutes, and traces of a plan whose final step no one could reconstruct. The FBI named the investigation NORJAK, short for Northwest Hijacking. Agents searched the suspected drop zone from the air and on foot. Military personnel joined ground searches. Investigators questioned witnesses, tested theories, followed tips, and compared suspects against the descriptions given by the crew. The scale of the investigation was immense. Within 5 years, the FBI had considered more than 800 suspects. Most were quickly eliminated. Some seemed promising until a detail failed to fit: age, appearance, location, experience, or an alibi that could be verified. The hijacker's image was distributed across the country. His ransom bills were listed by serial number. Banks, casinos, and businesses were asked to watch for them, yet the money did not begin circulating. And Cooper did not reappear. The black tie became one of the case's most important surviving objects. Decades later, investigators recovered a partial DNA profile from it. But the sample could not be proven to belong only to the hijacker, and it did not reveal his identity. The evidence was real. It was simply never complete enough. For more than 8 years, none of the ransom was found. Then in 1980, 8-year-old Brian Ingram was with his family on a sandbar along the Columbia River. While clearing a spot near the water, he uncovered 3 deteriorating bundles of $20 bills. The total was $5,800. The serial numbers matched the Cooper ransom. It was the first physical evidence from the hijacking discovered outside the aircraft, and it created more questions than it answered. The money had been found well away from the area where investigators initially believed Cooper might have landed. No one could establish exactly when it reached the sandbar. It might have been carried by water, it might have been buried, it might have moved through a sequence of events that left no surviving record. If Cooper died during the jump, why was only a small portion of the ransom found? If he survived, why would he abandon it? And if the money entered the river somewhere else, where had it been before that? The discovery narrowed nothing with certainty. Instead, it added a second mystery to the first. The FBI eventually came to doubt that Cooper survived. The agency's reasoning was practical. He jumped at night over wooded terrain. He wore business clothing and dress shoes. The parachute he selected could not be steered, and there was no evidence that he had arranged help on the ground. Some details also challenged the popular image of Cooper as an expert parachutist. An experienced jumper might have chosen different equipment, clothing, and conditions. But doubt is not proof. No confirmed body was found. No parachute was conclusively recovered. No final piece of evidence established where his descent ended. Survival would have required extraordinary luck, or far more preparation than investigators could demonstrate. Death would explain his silence, but it would leave the missing equipment, most of the ransom, and the absence of remains unresolved. Both possibilities contain gaps. That is why the case endures. Over the decades, dozens of people have been publicly proposed as the hijacker. Some had military backgrounds, some were parachutists, some resembled the witness sketches, some were connected to suspicious stories revealed only after their deaths. One of the best known was Richard Floyd McCoy, who carried out a similar hijacking several months later. But the FBI investigated him and ruled him out, citing differences in physical descriptions and other evidence. Other suspects attracted books, documentaries, family testimony, or private investigations. None produced the combination the case demands: a reliable identity linked to the aircraft, the ransom, and the jump through verifiable physical evidence. Similarity is not identification. A compelling story is not proof. And after decades of publicity, the legend itself has made the truth harder to isolate. There is one final detail that captures the entire case. The hijacker never called himself D.B. Cooper. He purchased his ticket as Dan Cooper. The initials entered the story through an early reporting error when another man's name became confused with the suspect's alias. The mistake spread and became permanent. The most famous name in the case may be the first thing about it that is not true. In 2016, the FBI redirected active investigative resources away from NORJAK. The physical evidence was preserved and the file did not disappear, but the agency's large-scale hunt had effectively reached its end. The official investigation produced thousands of pages, hundreds of suspects, witness sketches, scientific tests, and one small collection of ransom money recovered from a riverbank. It did not produce Dan Cooper. Perhaps Cooper never walked away from the wilderness. Perhaps the jump ended within minutes, leaving the forest and river to erase almost every trace. Or perhaps an unknown man landed, escaped the search area, and returned to an ordinary life beneath a name investigators never considered. There is evidence for the event. There is evidence for the investigation. But the final chapter remains empty. So which explanation requires the smaller leap? That D.B. Cooper died unseen? Or that he survived and never told the world?